Today we are really getting into a conversation you shared with us, one that's all about that quest we all seem to be on, finding the perfect holiday.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about lists of places to go.
Mm,
We're looking at the why. Why do we choose the trips we do? How do we experience them?
exactly. We've got this fantastic unscripted chat you sent over covering everything from like really basic camping right through to luxury travel.
Mm-hmm. And alongside that, some really insightful notes you included, unpacking the specific language people used in that conversation, which is fascinating in itself.
It really is. So our mission here is to explore that whole spectrum. What makes a holiday amazing? Or sometimes what makes it go disastrously wrong.
And how does the language we use, the words we pick, show what we really value when we travel?
Get ready, because as we unpack all this, you might just find some surprising things about your own travel style, maybe how it links to your personality even.
And perhaps rethink what a great getaway actually means to you.
Okay, so let's dive right in. One end of the holiday spectrum that came up straight away was camping. You mentioned your own family trying it out recently with young kids.
Yes, dipping our toes in the water, so to speak, definitely brought back some childhood memories.
And the conversation you shared introduced someone, let's call her a real seasoned camper. Her family holidays growing up were pretty much always camping.
Right, always. And for her family, back then, a big part of it, the main draw, really was just that it was affordable. Simple as that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Camping is often the most, well, budget-friendly way to see amazing places.
Absolutely. But listening to her, it wasn't just about the money, especially now, for her and her husband. It's that chance to properly explore nature. She mentioned Cornwall, the South Coast.
Perfect places for walking, hiking, climbing, all the stuff her husband loves. He sounds really outdoorsy.
Very outdoorsy. So it's that mix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Practical, cost-effective, but also about the experience, getting out there.
But camping, it's not always sunshine and peaceful nights, is it? The conversation definitely went there, into the less pleasant side.
Oh, definitely.
Oh.
When it goes wrong. And according to her, it nearly always came down to one thing.
Let me guess. The weather.
Bingo, the weather. She talked about these, horrific storms in Cornwall, camping on a clifftop somewhere.
Oh, wow.
Incredibly windy, just relentless rain. And the noise, she described the sound of the thin tent canvas just flapping violently.
Yeah, that sounds stressful.
Or with their old trailer tent, the really old school ones. Heavy canvas, metal poles, making this awful squeaking, rocking noise all through the night. Doesn't sound restful at all.
Not exactly relaxing. And then there's the actual water getting in. Flooding must be a constant worry if you're, say, pitched downhill.
Yeah, she mentioned runoff water just collecting around the tent.
Or that classic tent problem, you can't touch the sides when it's raining.
Exactly. She said it was a total nightmare with these enormous blow-up beds they had,
Oh.
pushing right out against the sides.
Mm-hmm.
So touching the wet canvas was just, unavoidable. You end up with a damp bed.
And even if it doesn't rain, condensation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other joy. All that body heat inside, the cold fabric outside, the moisture in the air just turns to liquid on the tent walls. Touch the side.
And it's wet. Yeah. Your story from Aconcagua really illustrated that perfectly. Those huge sort of open plan teepee tents with 16 hikers crammed in.
16 people, all breathing in this confined space. It was freezing outside, obviously, but inside.
All that body heat, all that respiration.
Exactly. The condensation was unbelievable. You'd get actual pools of water forming on the inside of the roof.
And you mentioned that awful sound.
Yeah, the drip, drip, drip.
Mm.
In the middle of the night, you'd wake up because water was literally dripping on your face.
Oh, that's grim.
And sometimes you'd have to shift your bunk bed because you realized it was, basically someone else's condensed breath dripping on you from the roof lining.
Okay, yeah. Pretty gross is definitely the right description there.
It really was. So yeah, battling the elements seems like a core part of that traditional camping experience.
But camping isn't monolithic, is it? The conversation also touched on her camping with just her husband before they had kids. That sounded quite different.
Yeah, more romantic maybe, places like the Lake District. And the advantage then was flexibility. Packing down a small tent is easy. You can just, move on whenever you like.
But now, she said, if it was just the two of them wanting a romantic getaway, she'd probably lean towards something a bit more deluxe.
Right. Glamping maybe, or a camper van, which is an interesting shift, isn't it? From that tiny tent you can chuck in the boot to wanting a bit more comfort.
That camper van tour they did sounded fantastic, though, for their 20th anniversary.
Yeah, hired one in Edinburgh, spent 2 weeks driving up the west coast of Scotland.
Now that sounds like freedom, being able to just sort of pitch up almost anywhere.
Pretty much. She talked about just pulling over by the roadside next to a beautiful loch one night, then maybe finding a proper campsite the next.
Though the practicalities are different depending on where you stop.
Oh, absolutely. Roadside camping often involves, well, let's just say basic sanitation. Her phrase was having to squat by the side, find a bush.
Haha, right. Not glamorous.
Whereas the camper van itself usually has basics like electric and gas on board, for charging phones, maybe a small hob.
But for decent showers, proper toilets, or if you want to plug in properly at a hookup, you really need a designated campsite.
Yeah, you need those facilities sometimes.
And it's interesting that hiring camper vans seems more common now, even through places like Airbnb. Makes that kind of touring holiday more accessible.
Definitely. And then moving slightly up the comfort scale again, you've got glamping, glamorous camping.
Right. You talked about it maybe starting as a bit of a fad, but it feels like it's stuck around, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think we agreed. It feels like it's here for the long term. It seems to hit that sweet spot for a lot of people.
Wanting the outdoors, but also wanting, well, not roughing it too much.
Exactly. We're not talking basic tents here. Glamping usually means more permanent structures, things like yurts, maybe with wooden frames.
And crucially, those little luxuries you miss in a tent. Electricity, perhaps. A proper bed off the ground.
Yeah, often flooring too, maybe rugs, so you're not just on a ground sheet. It's camping, but comfortable.
The anti-condensation experience, maybe. But this leads to that interesting point you brought up in the chat, this apparent contradiction.
Ah, right. Yeah, I mentioned finding it slightly surprising that she, this seasoned camper, also came across as quite, well, glamorous.
You used the term glamour puss, I think.
Uh-huh. Maybe you did. But, caring about appearance, liking nice things, enjoying being pampered, it seemed initially a bit at odds with sleeping in a potentially muddy field.
And exploring her other holiday experiences kind of sheds light on that. She hasn't really done a full-on family hotel holiday, apparently.
No, but she's done city breaks, stayed in apartments, villas abroad. The only time she did all-inclusive was actually her honeymoon.
And the reason they tend to avoid all-inclusive now...
It's mostly her husband's preference. He doesn't like the idea of being tied to one hotel for all your meals, especially if the food isn't great, even if the hotel has multiple restaurants.
He wants the freedom to eat out, explore local restaurants.
Exactly. Which contrasts a bit with your own past holiday style, you said, often looking for more budget-friendly options.
Yeah, definitely. Always looking for last-minute deals, maybe half-board or B&B rather than all-inclusive. And I definitely did the whole backpacking thing, staying hostel to hostel in Argentina years ago.
Which you admitted you probably wouldn't fancy now.
No, definitely not now. And that touches on another theme from the conversation, how our travel tastes change over time.
Getting older, having a family, often means you start prioritizing security, ease, maybe a bit more comfort.
And then perhaps later in life, when the kids are grown up, there might be a swing back towards seeking more outright luxury. You mentioned jacuzzis, hot tubs, private pools.
Ah, yes, hot tubs. They seem to be all the rage right now, don't they? You see them advertised everywhere, like with those Center Parcs lodges.
And you had that great story about your 40th birthday trip there, insisting on using the hot tub despite absolutely dreadful weather.
Well, I paid for it, we're going to enjoy it, rain or shine. Or, in that case, wind and sideways rain.
We also mused about those famous Santorini hot tubs on the caldera edge. Probably used more in the evenings, right? Or maybe cold as a plunge pool when it's really hot.
Yeah, probably not bubbling away in the midday sun.
So there's this kind of arc, isn't there? Maybe budget and adventure when you're younger, then family needs dictate a balance of cost and comfort, and maybe later on a shift towards pure relaxation and luxury. It's a whole spectrum.
Definitely. But looping back to the outdoorsy side, the conversation really painted a picture of her husband, Neil, as someone deeply connected to nature, loves hiking, exploring.
Right. And she had talked about going with him, but being very aware of her own limits. Like, she wouldn't attempt a big peak like Snowdon. She even mentioned struggling sometimes with just a flight of stairs.
Yeah, she uses hiking sticks, she said, for balance, especially if the ground isn't very steady underfoot, off-road paths with loose stones and gravel.
It shows she joins in with his passion, but adapts it. And she made a point of saying he's patient, he doesn't crack the whip.
No, he apparently likes to take his time, look around, absorb what's around him. It sounds like a more contemplative approach to being outdoors, not just about bagging peaks.
And his interest in things like foraging and bushcraft fits with that, doesn't it? Learning about wild plants, like using nettles for healing or food.
She mentioned nettles for soap, tea, soup. It's fascinating.
It all ties into this dream he apparently has of sustainable living, maybe even living off-grid, a bit like Bear Grylls, you joked.
Okay, it's more than just a hobby. It sounds like a deeper philosophy for him.
Which reminded you of that amazing experience you had in Argentina, that hike up to a glacier bowl.
Oh, yeah. A long, tough hike, but the goal. Yeah. We took a tiny little Bunsen burner with us.
A Bunsen burner?
Yeah. And we chipped off a piece of glacial ice, melted it on the burner, and boiled the glacial water to make a cup of tea. Right there in the bowl of the glacier.
That is such a specific, brilliant detail. It makes the whole hike so much more memorable than just reaching a viewpoint. It had this quirky, tangible goal.
It really did. And it tasted amazing, that tea. Which led us onto that little tangent about water quality, didn't it?
Yeah, contrasting that incredibly pure glacial water with, say, London tap water. You mentioned your old house had a lead pipe.
Yes. We discovered we still had the original lead supply pipe coming into the house, and there's always that worry that lead could potentially seep into the water.
Yeah, the risk of lead poisoning. Did you have to get the plumbing changed?
We did. Major plumbing job to replace it from the street right into the house. Such a stark contrast thinking about that versus drinking melted glacier ice.
It really grounds the whole travel conversation in everyday realities, doesn't it? Even when talking about amazing adventures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when it came to picking the most memorable holidays, you both found it tricky to pinpoint just one or two.
It's always hard. But the Disney World Florida trip definitely came up as a big one for her family.
Yet 2 weeks. Her daughters were, what, nearly 5 and 9. And their birthdays fell during the trip, which must have been special.
Definitely. Visiting all the parks, Universal, Magic Kingdom, Epcot, staying in apartments nearby with a communal pool. They went to Clearwater Beach, too, I think.
Sounds exhausting, but amazing for the kids. She talked about seeing the magic through their eyes, the older one totally captivated by the princesses.
Right, getting glammed up at that Bibi Bobbidi Boo boutique place.
And the younger one swimming with dolphins at Discovery Cove. Those are the moments that stick, aren't they?
Totally. Though you did touch on the classic theme park downside. They often fall down on the food.
Yeah, it tends to be a lot of mass-produced fast food. She said her family mostly ate outside the parks or took packed lunches.
Which led to that funny story about portion sizes and getting a massive cup full of Parmesan cheese somewhere.
Yes. So Disney was one standout. The other one she mentioned, perhaps surprisingly, was that Scotland campervan tour.
Yeah, she really hadn't expected to enjoy it as much as she did.
She put it down to a combination of things: beautiful weather, crucially being there outside the main season for midges.
Oh, God, the midges. Essential to avoid them.
And being out of the school holidays, so it was quieter. But mostly the scenery. She said it was just stunning, like the Rockies or being on a film set.
And that feeling of freedom again, not quite knowing where they'd sleep each night, just moving on, seeing a lot of it. That really appealed to her.
It did. And that resonated with your own experience of touring Scotland, didn't it, when you were working as an actress?
Yeah, years ago, touring with theater shows in winter, we saw some incredible places. Beautiful, crisp, clear, sunny days sometimes, even in winter.
And those landscapes feel so untouched, so extreme up there.
Absolutely. The autumn and winter colors were stunning. We'd be driving for miles to find these tiny, remote primary schools to perform pantomimes. It definitely took me back hearing her talk about touring Scotland.
So, yeah, whether it's the big planned family theme park trip focused on the kids or a more spontaneous tour immersing yourselves in nature and freedom, both create these really powerful, lasting memories, just in different ways.
Okay, so that covers the different experiences. But the other fascinating layer here was the language itself. Let's spend a bit of time unpacking some of those specific words and phrases that came up, using those notes you shared, because they often tell their own story.
Yeah, absolutely. The way we describe things reveals a lot. You started by calling the main person we discussed a seasoned camper traveler.
Right. Seasoned just means experience, doesn't it? She's done it a lot.
Exactly. And the initial reason for camping was the main draw of cost.
Main draw, yeah. The primary attraction, the biggest reason. For them, it was definitely the affordability back then.
And her husband was described as outdoorsy.
Someone who just loves being outdoors, hiking, climbing, that sort of thing.
Then she said the bad camping times were often to do with the weather.
To do with just a really common, casual way to say related to or connected with something.
The old trailer tent was old school.
Yeah, old school. It means old-fashioned, but often in a good way, right? Like it has character, it's nostalgic.
And the water coming down the hill was runoff.
Runoff, yeah, simply water running off a surface, like rain on a slope.
And the problems with the blow-up bed.
Just an inflatable mattress, but a key part of the story about touching the tent sides.
Hoping tent technology had moved on.
Moved on here, meaning progressed, improved, hoping tents didn't leak like they used to.
Inside that Aconcagua tent, there were bunk beds.
Beds stacked up, yeah. Common in hostels, shared spaces, saves room.
And the tent itself was open plan.
Meaning no internal walls or dividers, just one big space, like that teepee with all the hikers.
You jokingly called the beds away from the edges the best in the house.
Haha. Yeah, definitely sarcastic, meaning the best option in that specific place, even though it wasn't a house and they turned out to be directly under the drips.
Also calling it a prime location.
Again, total sarcasm. Prime location usually means the best spot, the most desirable place. These beds were anything but.
Asking what's going on or what went on when things got wet.
Just a natural, informal way to ask what's happening or what happened.
And you use that slightly odd term, breathers, for the people causing the condensation?
Did I? Oh, yeah. Just meaning the people breathing, creating the moisture. A bit clinical, maybe?
And the moisture itself, condensation.
That process of water vapor turning liquid on a cold surface, the enemy of campers everywhere.
Finding the whole dripping situation pretty gross.
Yeah, informal, but gets the point across. Very unpleasant.
The bad experiences hinged on the weather.
Meaning the weather was the crucial factor, everything depended on it.
Discussing romantic camping as a venture.
Using venture adds a little sense of adventure, or perhaps risk to it. Makes it sound more exciting than just trip.
Preferring something more deluxe now.
Deluxe, just a higher standard, more comfortable, more luxurious than the basic option.
And the word glamping, of course.
That perfect blend, glamorous camping, says it all.
In the camper van discussion, needing to pitch or pitch up.
That's the verb for setting up your camp, isn't it? Putting up the tent, parking the van in its spot.
And needing to hook up the van.
Connecting to the mains electricity supply on a campsite.
The description of roadside toilets as having to squat.
Very direct, colloquial term for, well, doing what you have to do outdoors.
Having power and gas on board.
Meaning available within the vehicle itself.
Using a gas canister.
Portable fuel container, essential for camping stoves usually.
Going to the loo.
Standard British informal phrase for using the toilet.
Mentioning you can hire a van.
Hire, the common British English term for rent.
Glamping, possibly starting as a fad.
A fad being a short-lived trend, although you both felt glamping was more permanent.
Structures like yurts.
Those round, semi-permanent tent structures often used for glamping.
You calling her a glamour puss.
Haha, yes. Playful term for someone glamorous who likes to look good.
Saying she might come across as someone who likes being pampered.
Come across as, yeah, meaning how she appears or how others might perceive her.
The idea being pampered.
Treated luxuriously, special treatments, relaxation.
Talking about city breaks.
Short holidays focused on visiting a city.
A honeymoon.
The trip couples take right after getting married.
Discussing all-inclusive holidays.
Packages where food, drinks, maybe activities are all included in the price.
Contrasting with high-end or self-catering.
High-end meaning luxury, expensive. Self-catering means you get a kitchen to cook your own food.
Preferring to eat out.
Go to restaurants rather than cooks.
Not wanting to be tied to the hotel food.
Tied to meaning restricted by, obligated to use it.
Looking for budget-friendly options.
Affordable, good value doesn't break the bank.
Last-minute deals.
Cheap offers booked close to the travel date.
Half-board and bed and breakfast.
Hotel meal plan terms. Half-board is usually breakfast and dinner. B&B is just breakfast.
Staying hostel to hostel.
Budget travel, staying in shared dormitory-style accommodation.
Going from one extreme to another or two extremes.
Experiencing very different things or pushing boundaries.
Basic camping as roughing it.
Living simply, without usual comforts, often outdoors.
Luxury being the flip side.
The opposite aspect or alternative.
Hot tubs being all the rage.
Very popular and fashionable at the moment.
A hot tub or jacuzzi.
Heated tubs with jets. Jacuzzi is a brand name often used generally.
Her daughter could keep up with her dad hiking.
Maintain the same pace, not fall behind.
Struggling with a flight of stairs.
Just a single set of stairs between floors.
Using hiking sticks.
Poles for balance and support when walking, especially on rough terrain.
Ground not being steady underfoot.
Unstable, uneven, easy to slip on.
Walking off-road.
On natural ground, not paved paths or roads.
Ground with loose stones gravel.
Makes it unstable to walk on.
Her husband doesn't crack the whip.
That idiom, meaning he doesn't push her hard or use authority to make her go faster.
His interest in foraging.
Searching for wild food.
Mentioning nettles.
That stinging plant that can actually be used for various things.
The idea of sustainable living and living off-grid.
Living with less environmental impact and being self-sufficient without public utilities.
Referencing Bear Grylls.
The famous TV survival expert.
Using a Bunsen burner on the hike.
That lab equipment used unusually for making tea.
Boiling glacial waters.
Water directly from a glacier, presumed very pure.
The problem with a lead pipe piping.
Old water pipes made of lead, a health risk now.
Lead potentially seeping into the water.
Slowly leaking or spreading into it.
Risk of lead poisoning.
The illness caused by lead exposure.
Needing work on the plumbing.
The whole water system in a building.
Hard to pinpoint the best holiday.
Difficult to identify one single exact thing.
Apartments with a communal pool.
A swimming pool shared by everyone staying there.
Describing age caps. 4 days between birthdays, or there's 4 years between them.
Common ways to phrase these differences. Using theirs for a plural is very natural informal speech.
Her daughter got glammed up.
It made herself look glamorous, dressed up with makeup, etc.
Discovery Cove.
That specific park where you swim with dolphins.
Theme parks often fall down on the food.
Meaning they don't do well in that area, it's a weak point.
Food being mass-produced.
Made in very large quantities, often implying lower quality or less care.
Taking packed lunches.
Lunches prepared at home to take out.
The inside of that.
Slightly informal version of apart from that, or besides that.
Touring Scotland.
Traveling around, visiting various places.
Avoiding the midges.
Those tiny biting insects notorious in Scotland in summer.
Booking in out of school holidays.
During school vacation time, often busy, expensive, or during term time.
Scenery like a film set.
So beautiful or dramatic, it looks artificial or perfect.
Landscape being untouched.
Wild, natural, undeveloped by humans.
Performing pantomimes.
Those traditional British winter theater shows, usually for families.
Weather or colors being crisp.
Clear, sharp, fresh, invigorating.
The conversation having taken me back.
Meaning it reminded her strongly of the past, evoked memories or feelings.
Wow. Going through the language like that really shows how much nuance there is, doesn't it? These aren't just words. They carry... Picture this.
Yeah.
They're on a cliff top somewhere.
Oh, wow. Exposed.
Totally exposed. Incredibly windy. Rain just lashing down. And the noise. If it was a modern thin tent, the canvas is just flapping like mad all night.
Yeah, that sound.
Or she mentioned they used to have an old school trailer tent. You know, the ones with heavy canvas and metal poles.
Proper solid things.
Solid, but noisy. She said in the wind, the whole thing would just squeak and rock constantly, trying to sleep through that nightmare.
Oh, I can imagine. Just rocking back and forth.
And then there's the water itself, not just falling from the sky, but flooding if your pitch is even slightly downhill.
Oh, yeah, the runoff. All the water from higher ground just heads straight for your tent.
Exactly. You wake up in a puddle, or...
Yeah.
Other classic tent problem she mentioned. Touching the sides.
The golden rule. Don't touch the sides when it's raining.
Right, because the water just comes straight through. But she said it was a nightmare because they had these enormous blow-up beds.
Inflatable beds, yeah.
Yeah, the big comfy ones. But they were so big, they pushed right out against the tent walls. So you could not touch the sides.
Oh, no. So your bed just gets damp and cold. Ugh.
Pretty much. Even if it's not raining. Condensation.
Oh, condensation is the silent enemy of camping, isn't it?
Totally. Just all that body heat inside, the warmer air hitting the cold tent fabric. Suddenly, everything inside is damp. You touch the side, it's wet. Even your sleeping bag can get damp.
Your story about Aconcagua really brought that home. That sounded intense. You were in these huge teepee tents with loads of people.
Yeah, huge sort of communal tents. 16 hikers packed into each one.
16, wow.
Yeah, basic bunk beds, no partitions, totally open plan. And outside, it's absolutely freezing, below zero. But inside, 16 breathing bodies.
About warm air, all that moisture.
The condensation was unbelievable. You look up, and there were literally pools of water forming on the inside of the tent roof.
Oh, gross.
And then the dripping started. That horrible, slow drip, drip, drip sound in the dead of night.
Right onto your face, probably.
Sometimes, yeah. You'd wake up because something wet landed on you, and you'd have to shift your bed, try and find a dry spot, realizing it was basically someone else's condensed breath dripping on you.
Okay, pretty gross. That's definitely the right description there. That sounds truly unpleasant.
It really was. So yeah, battling the elements, the dampness, that seems to be the big challenge with traditional camping, based on these stories.
It does. But the conversation also showed that camping isn't just one single thing. It's not all hardship. You talked about Nikki and Neil camping just as a couple, before they had kids.
Yeah, that sounded quite different. More romantic, maybe? Go to places like the Lake District, just the two of them.
And the advantage then, I suppose, was flexibility.
Totally. Small tent, easy to pack down, chuck in the car boot. You can just decide to move on whenever you fancy, find another beautiful spot. Much simpler.
But interestingly, she said now, if it was just the two of them wanting a romantic getaway, she wouldn't choose that small tent.
No, definitely not. She said she'd go for something more deluxe now, like glamping or maybe a camper van.
That shift is interesting, isn't it? From that basic pack-it-down freedom to wanting a bit more comfort, even for an outdoorsy trip.
It is. And that camper van tour they did sounded pretty amazing, actually, for their 20th anniversary.
Yeah, tell us about that again. They hired one?
Hired one in Edinburgh, yeah.
Yeah.
And spent 2 whole weeks touring up the west coast of Scotland. Which sounds incredible.
Oh, that does sound good. That gives you a totally different kind of freedom, doesn't it? Compared to a hotel or even a fixed campsite.
Completely. The freedom to just pitch up almost anywhere. She talked about pulling over by the roadside next to a beautiful loch for the night, or finding a proper campsite if they needed facilities.
Right. Though the roadside option comes with its own practicalities, shall we say.
Huh. Yes. The sanitation side of things, as Nikki very directly put it, sometimes it literally meant having to squat by the side, find a bush.
Keeping it real. Yeah.
Definitely keeping it real. But the van itself probably had basics, right? Electric and gas on board.
Yeah, usually they do. For lights, maybe charging phones, a small cooker, using a gas canister. But she made the point that you still really need a proper campsite quite often.
For what? Decent showers.
Decent showers, proper loos, not having to go find a bush. And crucially, to hook up to the mains electricity if you want to run heating or charge laptops or stay put for a bit longer.
Right, the hookup. That makes sense. You can't run everything off the van's battery forever.
Exactly. And it's interesting that hiring camper vans seems easier now. You mentioned platforms like Airbnb even do them.
Yeah, apparently so. It seems like that whole style of touring holiday is becoming more accessible, not just for people who own their own van.
Which is great. And then moving slightly further along the comfort scale, perhaps, glamping.
Ah, yes, glamping. Glamorous camping. You talked about it starting off feeling like maybe just a fad.
A little bit, yeah. Like, is this just a trendy thing? But we both sort of agreed it feels like it's here for the long term now, doesn't it?
I think so. It seems to hit that sweet spot we were just talking about. You get the outdoor experience, you're close to nature, but you've got comfort, real comfort.
Yeah, it's not just a flimsy tent you put up yourself. We're talking more permanent structures often, aren't we? Like those yurts she mentioned.
Exactly. Yurts, bell tents, sometimes wooden cabins or pods, often with proper wooden poles, solid frames.
And the key things you miss in basic camping, like electricity.
Electricity, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
A proper bed, usually not an air mattress on the floor, maybe even proper flooring, rugs. So you're not just living directly on the ground.
It's like the ultimate anti-condensation setup. No damn sleeping bags here.
Hopefully not. But this whole spectrum, from basic tent to glamping pod, brings us back to that really interesting point you raised in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
This sort of perceived disconnect you felt about Nikki.
Right. Yeah, I admitted to her I was initially a bit surprised she was such a, seasoned camper. Because my perception of her just from seeing her around was quite glamorous.
How so?
Well, someone who seems to care about their appearance, likes nice clothes, hair done, bit of jewelry, someone who enjoys being, well, pampered sometimes. It just seemed initially to clash a bit with the idea of, roughing it in a muddy field.
Right. The glamour puss camping, maybe?
Maybe. Though I think I used that term playfully. But it made me wonder how these different sides fit together.
And looking at her other holiday experiences helped shed some light on that, didn't it? You found out she hasn't actually done a full-on family hotel holiday.
No, never with the kids. But she has done city breaks, stayed in nice apartments, villas abroad when traveling. The only time she did an all-inclusive package was way back on her honeymoon.
Okay. And you asked why they tend to avoid all-inclusive now.
Yeah. And it came down mainly to Neil, her husband, his preference. He apparently doesn't like the idea of being tied to one hotel for all your meals.
Worried the food might not be great.
Exactly. Even if the hotel has multiple restaurants, he prefers the freedom to go out, explore local places, try different things, not be stuck with the hotel buffet if it's not up to scratch.
That makes sense. You want flexibility, especially with food.
Mm-hmm. And that contrasts a bit with my own holiday history, which I mentioned was often driven by finding budget-friendly options.
Right. You're always looking for the deals.
Pretty much. Last-minute deals, definitely. Or choosing half-board or bed and breakfast rather than all-inclusive to keep costs down. And way back when I was backpacking in Argentina, it was literally staying hostel to hostel. Basic dorm rooms, shared facilities.
Proper budget traveling. Would you do that now?
Honestly, probably not. Maybe a private room in a nice hostel, but the shared dorm days are likely behind me. And that brings up another layer that came through strongly in the conversation, how our preferences just naturally evolve over time.
Yeah, definitely. Getting older, maybe having a family, your priorities shift, don't they? You start wanting a bit more security, maybe, more ease, less roughing it.
I think so. Especially with kids, convenience becomes a massive factor. And then looking further ahead, maybe once the kids are grown up and gone, perhaps there's another shift back towards seeking more luxury.
Could be. That's when you mentioned things like jacuzzis, hot tubs, maybe even a private pool becoming more appealing. A bit of indulgence.
Hot tubs definitely came up. You said they seem to be all the rage at the moment.
They really do. You see them advertised everywhere. Places like Center Parks. Almost every lodge seems to have one now.
Oh, Center Parks. You told that brilliant story about your 40th birthday there. You had a lodge with a hot tub.
We did. And the weather was absolutely appalling. Pouring rain, windy, just miserable.
But you were determined to use that hot tub.
I was. My thinking was basically, I paid for this hot tub. We are going to sit in this hot tub and enjoy it, damn it. Even if we needed umbrellas.
Huh. I love that attitude, getting your money's worth. We also speculated about those amazing hot tubs you see in places like Santorini perched on the cliffs.
Oh, yeah, the dream view. We figure they must be mainly for, like, sunset watching in the cooler evening.
Probably. Or maybe if it's really scorching hot during the day, you'd use them cold, just as a plunge pool to cool off.
Ooh, maybe. A cold jacuzzi. Interesting idea. So yeah, we see this whole arc emerging, don't we? Maybe starting with budget and adventure when you're young.
Then moving into a phase where family needs dominate, balancing cost, comfort, kid-friendly activities.
And then maybe later on, a swing back towards pure relaxation, luxury, ease. It's a really fascinating spectrum of desires and how they change.
Definitely. Now let's swing back from the comfort of hot tubs to the slightly more rugged side again. The conversation really highlighted Neil's character, Nikki's husband. He sounds incredibly outdoorsy.
He really does. Proper lover of the outdoors, hiking, exploring, seems to be his thing, deeply.
And Nikki talked about going with him on hikes, but also being very aware of her own limits, which is important.
Yeah, she was clear. She wouldn't be tackling massive peaks like Snowdon or anything like that. She even mentioned struggling sometimes with just a single flight of stairs.
Right. And she uses hiking sticks.
Yeah, hiking sticks for balance, especially when the ground isn't, perfectly flat and easy. She talked about off-road paths or ground that wasn't steady underfoot, mentioning loose stones and gravel. Sticks make a big difference then.
They really do, especially for confidence and stability. It shows she's finding ways to join in with his passion, but adapting it so it works for her.
And the way she described him was lovely, too. Said he doesn't crack the whip.
Ah, that's a great idiom. Meaning he doesn't pressure her or push her too hard.
Exactly. Doesn't try to make her go faster or further than she's comfortable with. She said he's patient, and he actually likes to stop, look around, really absorb what's around him.
That paints a nice picture. It's not just about conquering the trail, it's about being in the place.
Yeah, a different kind of outdoor enjoyment. And that fits with his other interests. You mentioned foraging and bushcraft.
Right. Learning about wild plants, how to use them. She mentioned nettles specifically.
Nettles, most people just avoid them because they sting.
I know. But apparently you can use them for all sorts healing things, making soap, nettle tea, nettle soup. If you know what you're doing, of course.
Well, that really underlines that connection with nature, doesn't it? It's not just walking through it, it's understanding it, using it.
Completely. And you said it ties into this bigger dream he has of sustainable living. Maybe even living off-grid one day.
Yeah, that aspiration came through. Sort of Bear Grylls type of ideal, maybe, but perhaps a bit less extreme. Just being more self-sufficient, closer to the land. It's more than just a hobby. It's almost a philosophy.
That's fascinating. And that whole theme of connecting with nature in a specific way brought up your own really memorable outdoor experience you shared, the hike in Argentina.
Ah, yes. The glacier hike. It wasn't just a hike to see a glacier. We had a mission.
Go on.
We hiked up to this incredible glacial bowl, stunning scenery, and we'd carried up a tiny little camping stove, like a Bunsen burner, almost.
Okay.
And the goal was to find a chunk of clean, falling glacial ice, melt it on the burner, and use the glacial water to make a cup of tea. Right there, surrounded by the ice.
Wow. That is brilliantly specific. I love it. Not just seeing the view, but interacting with it in such a unique way, using a Bunsen burner on a glacier.
It felt quite special, yeah. A very specific, slightly eccentric goal that made the whole hike incredibly memorable. And the tea tasted amazing, probably because of the setting.
I bet. And that very specific experience led to a really interesting little tangent in the conversation, didn't it? About water quality.
It did. Contrasting that incredibly pure, fresh glacial water with, say, tap water back home in London.
And you mentioned your old house actually had a potential issue with the tap water, something about the pipes.
Yeah, an old house, and we discovered it still had a section of the original lead pipe connecting to the mains.
Oh, wow. Lead piping. That's not good, is it?
No, definitely not. The concern is that tiny amounts of lead can seep into the water over time, and that carries a risk of lead poisoning, especially for children.
Gosh, so what did you have to do?
We had to get the plumbers in, major plumbing work, to replace that section of pipe. Costly, but necessary for peace of mind.
Absolutely. But what a stark contrast, eh? From worrying about lead potentially seeping into your drinking water at home to deliberately melting pure glacial ice for a cup of tea halfway up a mountain.
It really is. Puts things in perspective. And it just shows how these conversations about travel can branch off into all sorts of related, very real-life topics.
Definitely. Okay, so moving towards wrapping up the holiday experiences themselves. You both found it hard, understandably, to pinpoint the single best or most memorable holiday ever. It's tough, isn't it?
It really is. So many factors make a trip memorable. But a couple definitely stood out in the conversation.
The big family trip to Disney World, Florida seemed like a huge one for you.
Oh, massively. It was 2 weeks. The girls were at that perfect age, nearly 5 and 9. Their birthdays actually fell during the trip, only 4 days between them.
Oh, lovely. Double celebration.
Exactly. We did all the parks, Universal, Magic Kingdom, Epcot. We stayed in apartments off-site, but they had a great communal pool the kids loved. We even drove over to Clearwater Beach for a day.
Sounds full-on exhausting.
Totally exhausting.
Nah.
But in the best way. Seeing it all through their eyes was just magical. The older one was completely mesmerized by the princesses. She even got glammed up at that bibbidi-bobbidi-boo boutique place.
Ah, the full princess makeover.
The works. And the younger one, her big thrill was swimming with dolphins at Discovery Cove. Just pure joy on her face. Those are the moments that really stick.
Definitely. Though you did mention the classic theme park downside.
Ah, yes. The food. You felt they often fall down on the food.
Yeah, I often find that. It tends to be very mass-produced, lots of fast food, not always great quality or variety. Gets a bit much after a few days.
I know what you mean. Nikki said her family mostly ate outside the parks or took packed lunches in with them to avoid that.
Smart move. Saves money, too. Though she did have that funny story about portion sizes when they did eat out.
Oh, yeah. Getting a side order of Parmesan cheese with pasta and being presented with basically a whole breakfast cereal bowl full of it. Apparently, American portions can be huge.
Sounds about right. So Disney was one huge memory. And the other one that really shone through as unexpectedly brilliant was Nikki's Scotland camper van tour.
Yeah, that one surprised her, I think. She just loved it so much more than she perhaps expected to.
What made it so special for her?
A few things came together. They had amazing weather, which always helps in Scotland. Crucially, they went outside the main season for midges, those horrible little biting flies.
Oh, God, midges can ruin a trip. Good timing.
Essential timing. And because it was out of the school holidays, it was quieter, less busy everywhere. But mostly it was the scenery, just stunning. She described it as looking like the Rockies, or like something from film sets.
Wow, high praise for Scotland.
And it was that feeling of freedom again, not having a fixed itinerary, not quite knowing where they'd sleep each night, just moving on, exploring, and feeling like they saw a lot of it in those 2 weeks.
That really captures the appeal of that kind of touring holiday, doesn't it? The spontaneity.
It does. And it reminded you of your own experiences touring Scotland, didn't it? Though in very different circumstances.
Yeah, completely different. I was touring Scotland as an actress, doing kids' theater shows in winter, so often very cold.
Brr, but beautiful.
Incredibly beautiful. We had some stunning, crisp, clear, sunny winter days. The landscapes felt so untouched, so extreme sometimes. And the autumn and winter colors were just breathtaking. We'd be driving for miles to find these tiny remote primary schools to perform pantomimes. It was quite an adventure.
That sounds amazing, too. So whether it's a meticulously planned family trip to a theme park focused on manufactured magic for the kids,
or a spontaneous road trip focused on natural beauty and the freedom to roam.
both can create these incredibly powerful, lasting memories, just in very different ways. It really depends what you're looking for at that time.
Absolutely. It's all valid, isn't it? Okay, so we've talked a lot about the experiences themselves. Now let's just spend a bit of time unpacking some of the specific language that came up in that conversation, using those notes you provided. Because the words we choose really do add flavor, don't they?
They absolutely do. They carry connotations, assumptions, they reveal our perspective. It's worth looking at them.
Definitely. So right at the start, you described Nikki as a seasoned camper or seasoned traveler. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, just means experienced, someone who's done it a lot, knows the ropes, she's seasoned.
And the reason her family camped initially, the main draw.
The main appeal, the biggest reason. For them, back then, it was affordability. That was the main draw.
We talked about Neil being outdoorsy.
Yeah, just a great adjective for someone who genuinely loves being outside, active in nature, hiking, climbing, that sort of thing. He's outdoorsy.
And when things went wrong camping, Nikki said it was usually to do with the weather.
Simple phrase, super common. Just means related to or connected with. Her bad experiences were to do with bad weather.
The old trailer tent was described as old school.
Yeah, I love that term. It means old-fashioned, but usually in a good way. Like it's classic, maybe a bit cool because it's retro, or it has that nostalgic feel, not just old.
Right, and the water coming down the hill into the tent site runoff.
Exactly what it sounds like.
Yep.
Water running off the higher ground, especially after rain. Camping runoff is not your friend.
Definitely not. Then the blow-up beds.
The inflatable mattresses.
Yeah.
Common camping gear, but in her story, the source of the touching the sides nightmare.
And you hoped tent technology had moved on.
Yeah, moved on here just means progressed, advanced, improved, hoping modern tents were better at staying dry than the old ones.
Inside the Aconcagua tent, there were bunk beds.
Standard term for beds stacked one above the other,
Uh.
saves space, common in hostels, dorms, and apparently giant Argentinian base camp tents.
And the tent layout itself was open plan.
Meaning no internal walls dividing the space,
Yeah.
just one big area, which probably added to the intimacy of 16 hikers sharing.
Huh. And you sarcastically called the beds near the middle, under the drip zone, the best in the house.
Yeah, definitely sarcastic. Best in the house normally means the very best option available in that specific place, even if it's not a house. Here, they were far from the best.
You also called them a prime location.
Again, total sarcasm. A prime location is usually the most desirable spot. These beds only seemed prime until the dripping started.
And finding the wet patches, you'd ask, what's going on? Or what went on?
Just a really common, casual way to ask what's happening or what caused something, like what went on here.
Referring to the other hikers causing the condensation as breathers.
Yeah, that was a slightly odd, maybe detached way to put it.
Yeah.
Just literally meaning the people who were breathing and creating all the moisture in the air. The 16 breathers.
And the moisture itself, condensation.
The scientific term for water vapor, turning liquid on a cold surface. The absolute bane of campers everywhere. Condensation.
You summed up that dripping situation as pretty gross.
Yep. Informal, but gets the point across very effectively. Very unpleasant, disgusting. Pretty gross.
Nikki's saying the bad camping trips hinged on the weather.
Hinged on is a great phrase. It means it depended crucially on that one factor. The success or failure of the trip hinged on whether the weather was good or bad.
Discussing early camping as a couple as a romantic venture.
Using venture adds a little touch of excitement, maybe slight risk or uncertainty. Makes it sound more like an adventure than just a trip, a romantic venture.
But now preferring something more deluxe.
Yeah, deluxe just signifies a higher standard. More comfort, more luxury than the basic option. Moving up from the standard tent.
Which leads us to glamping.
The perfect blend. Glamorous plus camping. Glamping says it all.
In the camper van chat, needing to pitch or pitch up.
That's the specific verb for setting up your camp. You pitch a tent, or you pitch up with your camper van or caravan. Finding your camping spot.
And needing to hook up the van at a campsite.
That means connecting it to the mains electricity supply provided at the site. Getting your hookup.
The roadside toilet situation involved having to squat.
Very direct colloquial term for that specific action when you don't have a proper toilet. No point being delicate about it, I guess.
Having power and gas on board.
Means those facilities were part of the vehicle itself, carried within it.
Using a gas canister.
The portable metal container holding the gas, usually for the cooker or sometimes a small heater.
Needing to go to the loo.
Standard, polite, but informal British way of saying going to the toilet.
And you can hire a camper van.
British English for rent.
Yeah.
You hire a car, hire a van.
Glamping starting as maybe a fad.
A fad is a trend that becomes popular very quickly, but might disappear just as fast. You thought glamping had moved beyond being just a fad, though. Yeah, feels more established now, like those yurts.
A specific type of round tent, often quite sturdy and spacious, commonly used for glamping. You playfully called Nikki a glamour puss.
Yeah, just an informal, affectionate term for someone who likes to look glamorous, enjoys fashion and appearance.
And noted she might come across as someone who prefers being pampered.
To come across as is about perception, how someone seems to others based on their appearance or behavior.
And to be pampered.
It means to be treated very luxuriously, indulged, often with spa treatments, relaxation, being waited on.
Talking about city breaks.
Short holidays, usually just a few days, spent exploring a specific city.
A honeymoon.
The holiday a couple takes right after getting married. Traditionally, anyway.
All-inclusive holidays.
Where the price includes accommodation, meals, drinks, and sometimes activities, all in one package.
Contrasting with high-end or self-catering.
High-end means luxurious, expensive. Self-catering means your accommodation has a kitchen, so you cook for yourself.
Neil preferring to eat out.
Go to restaurants or cafes rather than eating at the hotel or cooking.
Not wanting to be tied to the hotel food.
Tied to means feeling obligated or restricted by something. He didn't want to be stuck with only that option.
Looking for budget-friendly options.
Cheap, affordable, doesn't cost too much, good value.
Finding last-minute deals.
Cheaper prices for travel or accommodation booked very close to the departure date.
Understanding hotel terms like half-board and bed and breakfast.
Yeah, half-board usually means breakfast and dinner are included. Bed and breakfast, B&B, is just the room or breakfast.
Your backpacking involves staying hostel to hostel.
Moving between hostels, which are typically very budget-friendly places, often with shared dorm rooms.
You can go from one extreme to another in travel styles.
Experience very different types of holidays, like rough camping one year and a luxury hotel the next. Or even within one trip, maybe.
Or go to extremes.
Pushing things to their limits, like the extreme cold on a Concagua or maybe extreme budget traveling.
Referring to basic camping as roughing it.
Living simply, without modern comforts, usually outdoors. Deliberately choosing basic conditions.
Luxury being the flip side.
The opposite aspect, or alternative. The flip side of roughing it is luxury.
Hot tubs being all the rage.
It just means extremely popular and fashionable right now.
Mentioning a hot tub or jacuzzi.
Basically the same idea, a tub with heated, bubbly water. Jacuzzi is technically a brand name, but often used generically.
Nikki's daughter being able to keep up with Neil hiking.
Meaning she can maintain his pace, walk as fast as him without falling behind.
Nikki's struggling with a flight of stairs.
Just means a single set of stairs connecting one floor or level to another.
Using hiking sticks.
Poles specifically designed to help with balance and reduce strain when hiking.
Ground not being steady underfoot.
Uneven, slippery, unstable ground where it's easy to lose your balance.
Walking off-road.
On trails or terrain that aren't paved roads. Natural paths, fields, hillsides.
Ground with loose stones or gravel.
Surfaces covered in small, shifting stones that can be tricky to walk on.
Neil doesn't crack the whip.
Great idiom, meaning he doesn't use pressure or authority to make her hurry up or work harder. He's patient.
His interest in foraging.
Searching for and gathering wild food, like berries, mushrooms, edible plants.
Mentioning nettles.
That common stinging plant, which surprisingly has culinary and medicinal uses.
His dream of sustainable living and living off-grid.
Sustainable living is about minimizing environmental impact. Living off-grid is being self-sufficient, not connected to public utilities like water, electricity, gas.
Referencing Bear Grylls.
Famous TV adventure known for extreme survival skills. A kind of shorthand for that rugged off-grid lifestyle.
Your Bunsen burner on the glacier.
Yeah, the small gas burner usually found in science labs. A slightly unusual piece of hiking kit.
Boiling glacial water from glacial ice.
Water melted directly from ice taken from a glacier, presumably very pure.
The problem with lead pipe, or lead piping.
Water pipes made from lead, common in older houses, but now known to be a health hazard.
Lead could seep into the water.
Meaning it could slowly dissolve or leach into the water passing through the pipe.
Risk of lead poisoning.
The serious illness caused by accumulation of lead in the body.
Needing work done on the plumbing.
The whole system of pipes, tanks, and fittings for water supply and sanitation in a building.
Finding the best holiday is hard to pinpoint.
Difficult to identify or define exactly. Too many variables.
Staying somewhere with a communal pool.
A swimming pool shared by all the guests or residents, not private to one room or villa.
Your daughter's birthdays being 4 days between them, or saying there's 4 years between them?
Common ways of expressing the time difference. And yeah, that informal, there's, before a plural, there's 4 years, is very common in natural spoken English.
Your older daughter got glammed up.
Made herself look glamorous, usually involving special clothes, hair, maybe makeup. The princess treatment.
The Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo Boutique.
The specific name of the Disney place where kids get princess or night makeovers. Very memorable name.
Swimming with dolphins at Discovery Cove.
Another specific park name known for its marine animal interactions.
Theme parks often fall down on the food.
Meaning that's an area where they perform badly, a weak point. They fall down on food quality.
Food being mass-produced.
Made in very large quantities, using standardized industrial methods, often implying lower quality or less care.
Taking packed lunches.
Lunches prepared at home or in the self-catering apartment and brought along to eat later.
Using the phrase, a side of that.
A slightly less common but understandable way of saying apart from that or besides that.
Touring Scotland in the camper van or for work.
Traveling around a region, visiting multiple places rather than staying in one spot.
Avoiding the Scottish midges.
Those infamous, tiny, biting insects found in the Highlands, especially in summer, a real nuisance.
Going in or out of school holidays.
Traveling during the peak school vacation times, in, versus traveling during term time, out, affects prices and crowds.
Scenery looking like a film set.
So visually perfect or dramatic that it looks artificial, like it was constructed for a movie. A huge compliment to the landscape.
Describing the landscape as untouched.
Wild, natural, undeveloped, showing little or no sign of human interference.
Performing pantomimes.
Those traditional, slightly chaotic British Christmas plays, usually based on fairy tales, with lots of audience participation. A very specific cultural thing.
Winter days or colors being crisp.
Meaning clear, sharp, bright, and often cool and invigorating. A positive description for winter weather or autumnal colors.
And finally, Nikki saying the conversation had taken me back.
Meaning it reminded her strongly of the past, triggered nostalgic feelings or memories. That's taken me back.
Wow. Listing them like that really shows how much color and nuance these everyday words and phrases add. They're doing a lot of work in conveying the feeling of the experience.
They really are. It's not just what happened, but how it felt, what the attitude was. It's all wrapped up in the language, much more than just neutral descriptions.
Okay, so we have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we? It feels like we've journeyed right across the holiday map.
Definitely, from, battling storms in a flimsy tent on a Cornish cliff.
All the way to imagining lounging in a luxurious hot tub watching a Santorini sunset.
And everything in between. Budget backpacking, hostel to hostel.
The full-on family theme park blowout.
And that sense of freedom, exploring Scotland in a camper van.
Yeah, a huge range. And listening back, thinking about it all, it's just so clear that what makes a good holiday or a memorable one is incredibly varied. It's so personal.
It really is. Shaped by so many things. Practical stuff, obviously, like how much money you have, who you're traveling with.
But also deeper things, like our personalities, are we seeking adventure or comfort? Our stage of life, young and carefree, busy with young kids, maybe looking for relaxation later on.
Exactly. What are we actually looking for in that moment? Is it escape,
Yeah.
adventure, connection with nature, just pure, easy fun with the family, luxury?
And it's interesting how even the tough moments, the things that go wrong, the leaky tents you were talking about, the gross condensation story, even worrying about lead pipes back home, they become part of the story too. Sometimes they're the most vivid memories.
That's so true. Maybe not always fond memories at the time, but they stick with you. They add texture. And then you have those moments of pure magic or unique achievement.
Like brewing tea with actual glacial water using a Bunsen burner.
Or seeing that look of absolute wonder on your daughter's face when she meets a princess or swims with a dolphin. Those are the real treasures, aren't they? The things you hold on to.
Absolutely. So hopefully for everyone listening, digging into this conversation, exploring this whole spectrum of travel has maybe sparked some thoughts about your own trips, your own travel style.
Yeah, maybe giving you some aha moments about why you prefer certain kinds of holidays, or perhaps even inspired you to think about trying something different next time. Stepping outside your usual comfort zone, maybe.
Could be. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we wanted to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Going back to that core contrast we kept touching on.
The roughing it versus the luxury.
Exactly. When you think about those two extremes, the struggle of camping in bad weather versus the indulgence of a hot tub or a really comfortable hotel,
Right.
here's the question. Does enduring the struggle, the challenge, the roughing it part, actually make the moments of comfort and luxury feel more intense, more rewarding when you finally get them?
Ooh, interesting. Like, you appreciate the warmth more because you've been cold. You appreciate the easy meal more because you've had to forage or cook on a tiny stove.
Maybe. Or is it the other way around? Is it the anticipation of that eventual comfort, that luxury, that knowledge that the struggle isn't permanent, that actually motivates us through the difficult parts? Knowing there's a hot tub waiting at the end of the muddy trail, so to speak.
Huh. Does the struggle enhance the luxury? Or does the promise of luxury make the struggle bearable, even worthwhile?
Exactly. Which way does that relationship work? Something to ponder, perhaps, as you plan your next getaway.